When you add significant speed, especially highway speed, the likelihood of a fatality is greatly increased. Anytime you add any speed, you're greatly increasing the likelihood that you're going to physically be affected by that, because as you're traveling down the roadway at 70 miles an hour, your body is also traveling at 70 miles an hour. So whatever your vehicle experiences, your body's going to experience. I tell kids all the time when I'm talking to them in different classes, I explain to them, you know, specifically around seatbelts. I throw this one out all the time. You're traveling down the roadway at 70 miles an hour and you're not wearing your seatbelt. You crash into a tree, a vehicle, anything that stops your vehicle, how fast is your body traveling? Your body's still traveling at 70 miles an hour until your body reacts to something else in the vehicle. Very often, especially in impacts, it's the windshield. If you start to get ejected out of that seat because you're not wearing your seatbelt, you're going into that windshield at 70 miles an hour. And so I always tell kids, I'm like, who here wants to volunteer to just run from one side of the classroom to the other and put your head in the window? Obviously, I don't ever allow them to do that, but it's that concept. No one would rationally run into a window, let alone go into it at 70 miles an hour, but that's what you're agreeing to do. You don't wear your seatbelt. When you're doing certain things in a vehicle, your body is going to be impacting that. So I use that as an example to tell kids to wear their seatbelt, but it also applies to any type of crash. You're doing 70 miles an hour and you crash, your body is going to be dealing with that speed, and your body is going to be decelerating at whatever rate the impact is being brought upon you, and that greatly increases the likelihood of a fatality.
You were saying that even just above 45 miles an hour, that chance of fatality increases. Any idea, and it can be more anecdotal, you know, as that speed increases by 5 miles an hour, another 5, how much that chance goes up?
Wow,
it might be too math.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Traditionally, during our trainings we've had over the years and everything, one of the numbers that we tend to use a lot is 45 miles an hour seems to commonly be that threshold line where you start to exceed that 45 mile an hour line, the likelihood of a fatality greatly increases. Every 5 miles an hour you do over, you're just increasing the odds. It's like a lottery that you don't want to enter yourself into if you don't need to. And I explain that to drivers that I deal with, that I stop for some of that excessive speed. I tell them, I just had you doing 80 miles an hour in a 55 mile an hour zone. 55 miles an hour on its own, if you're involved in a crash, is enough to greatly increase the likelihood of a fatality. Now you're adding 80 miles an hour. Why would you want to add that additional risk to yourself? But yet people do it every day.
To make you shake your head?
Every day. Every day. I drive during emergency response at high speeds on a regular basis. And I know it. I feel it. I see it on the roads every day, these crashes and the things that occur. And I know the risks that are out there for the general public. And I know the risks that are out there for me. I'm responding to a domestic where there's someone screaming for help. They need someone there now. And I am out there and I'm driving at, significant speed to get there, to help them, to protect them. But I also know if anything happens, I could die. And that's scary. And I know it's the speed. And then a couple days later, I get some 16-year-old kid doing the same speed. And I'm like, I did it because I needed to go save someone's life. Why are you doing it? And it's crazy. And maybe it's the age, maybe it's the experience that we have on the roadways. Probably a big part of it, but it baffles me that people are willing to do this and risk their lives, and they don't seem to recognize that when they do that, when they speed like that they are truly risking their lives.
19 years doing this, I can't imagine you've never gone to a fatality accident.
I've gone to many. I've been to hundreds.
And only anecdotally from speaking with other police officers, they say that one of the hardest things they have to do is go knock on the door of a family member to let them know that somebody died in a crash.
Knocking on somebody's door to tell them that their loved one is gone is the worst part of our job. It is. I remember them all. I remember the reactions. it's not good. And it's not necessary. In so many of these situations, and that's one of the reasons why I got into reconstruction, was to evaluate these and figure out what's happening here. And why I go and talk to a lot of kids and driver's ed classes and stuff like that is because I've seen a lot of the bad choices that kids make. I've gone and spoke to parents after their kids have died and tried to explain to them, you know, yes, they were involved in the crash, this is what happened. How did this happen? Like I was told that at one of the incidents that I went to tell the parent, how did this happen? Well, now I do that. Now I go and try and figure out, how did this happen? But then for us, how do we prevent this from happening? That's one of the things that I've been trying to focus on over the last few years, is how do we prevent this from happening? Because now I know how it happens with a reconstruction, but how do we prevent it from happening? And that's where trying to get the information out there, trying to let people know, when you do this, bad things happen. You know, and I started with the kids. The thought is, with doing a lot with driver's ed programs and stuff like that, that's when they're young and impressionable, and you hope you get that information out there so that they can see, if I do A, B, or C, something bad's gonna happen. A trooper told me once, if I do this, something bad's gonna happen. And I just hope it sticks with them so that they don't become one of those statistics, that they don't become that kid that I have to go to their parent and tell them they're not coming home.
You said it's the worst part of your job.
It is.
Why?
You're ruining someone's life, and the words coming out of my mouth, they will never forget. They will forever remember that I was the person that ruined their life. I get goosebumps just saying that. I have goosebumps. The look on a parent's face when you tell them that their child, who they love and care about, is never coming home. I did that to them. That's how we feel. I did that to them. Now, were we responsible? No. But we are still the ones that have to deliver that message to them that is going to forever change their life. You can't tell me that if that person saw me in a grocery store 3 years later, their heart isn't going to sink because I remind them of the loss of their child or loved one. It's hard to live with, to be able to go and have to do that to someone. It's our job, but it is absolutely, in my opinion, it's the hardest part of our job.
You answered all my questions, Sergeant.
Yeah,
I hope I wasn't too tough on you.
You don't want a story? You don't want a story?
A story about a crash?
No, a story about a speed.
Yeah, you got one?
I've got an awesome story.
Well, you gave me a bunch, but yeah, sure, let's hear it.
I love it. So as...
Here, hold on 1 second for me. I want to make sure you're all framed up. Let's see here. There we go. Okay, go for it.
So as a trooper working in the community, we establish partnerships with different community members and people that we ultimately work for, and that we try and aid them in what issues may arise in their communities. Well, specifically, I know a school bus driver, longtime school bus driver, Marion Dembo. She's a wonderful lady. She really cares about the kids. She's very, very safe. She knows that I like to go out and deal with speeders, problem drivers, stuff like that. So if she notices something in the community at a place in regards to driving, she lets me know and she puts me on task to get it taken care of. Well, she notified me one day that her school bus, while she had the red sign out, was passed by a vehicle that was doing nearly 100 miles an hour on a 45 mile an hour zone. I was a little shocked by this. I'm like, really? It just seemed like that seemed a little exaggerated. Like, is it really that? Like, is that really the speed? She said, oh no. She's like, it happened so fast. She's like, I didn't even see it. She's like, the kids on the bus had to tell me. She's like, I heard it and it was like a blur. And she's like, the kid was going to get on the bus and the kids on the bus were the ones that had to tell me that, yeah, that was a car that just passed us. And the kids described this silver sedan that had gone by them at an outrageous speed. And so, because I like to have my bus drivers put me on task to go deal with these concerns in our communities, I set up in that same area where the child gets on the school bus and waited for that vehicle around the same time, because my thought was that this was somebody on their way to work, a student headed to the school, something. And so I set up in the area, and sure enough, I get that vehicle coming around the corner. It's been a few years now, but I believe it's about 94 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone. And what it is based on where this vehicle came around the corner this was coming around a corner at outrageous speed. The school bus had been stopped in the roadway with a child coming on. Based on that speed, the driver could not physically stop or do anything to avoid that bus other than going around it, because it was going at such an outrageous speed that its feet per second travel wouldn't allow it any other option other than to pass the bus, putting the child and the kids on the bus at extreme risk. So a few days later, I have this vehicle now coming around that corner at 94 miles an hour in the same spot where the bus driver told me that they had seen this. And sure enough, it was a student heading to school. They didn't take it seriously. They thought it was kind of a joke. It was a very sad circumstance, but needless to say, I didn't have that happen again with that same driver. To me, I mean, that's the root of it right there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's dangerous. Think about that.
Yeah.
And you know, she's a young driver. She had no thought that coming around that corner at that speed was a big deal. But that's the thing, is that when you come around a corner, you have to be prepared for what might be there. And engineers have set these speeds based on the way the roads are set up, with corners, hills, driveways, intersections. They set that up to keep the roadways safe. So when you exceed the speed, you're also creating a risky situation where you may not be able to respond to obstructions in the roadway. And that's on you for going too fast.
You know, I'm going to turn this off.
Yeah.